Meghan's former nanny, often referred to as the housemaid, has finally broken her silence. And the moment she spoke, the picture the public believed began to collapse. She says she spent months living inside that California mansion, long enough to see past the polished photos, the soft-focus documentaries, and the carefully staged smiles. According to her, almost nothing inside that home matched the version presented to the world, not the family moments, not the pregnancies, and not the warm, happy household people imagined. She claims she witnessed things that never reached the headlines, moments never meant for outsiders, including one explosive argument that left the entire house on edge and left Harry wandering the halls like a man unsure of what was real anymore. But her most shocking statement isn't about the fights or the tension. It's about what she never saw. Because throughout all her months working 12-hour days, 5 days a week, she says she never once saw Archie. She never once saw Lilibet. Not a cry, not a laugh, not a toy left on the floor, no sign that two young children lived in that massive home. And with her silence now broken, one question is louder than ever. If Meghan's own nanny never saw the children, why has the public barely seen them either? She also revealed something few people knew about Meghan and Harry. Before anyone could be hired as a nanny, they first had to pass one of the strangest screening processes the staff had ever heard of. Sources say Meghan had one strict requirement: the nanny could not be too attractive or too polished, someone who wouldn't stand out in photos. The message was clear. In a house centered around image, even the staff had to fade into the background. But that was only the beginning. Once nanny candidates made it past the first stage, the real rules appeared. They had to be available around the clock. They couldn't have a partner. They couldn't have children of their own. They had to be willing to move instantly without asking questions. At that point, it stopped being a job and became a full takeover of their lives. And before any candidate ever met Meghan or Harry face to face, they were put through the strangest test of all. The Sussex mansion looked peaceful from the outside sunlit gardens. Perfect views, but inside, it functioned like a controlled environment. During the trial shift, candidates weren't just proving childcare abilities, they were unknowingly participating in a silent audition. Hidden cameras monitored everything: how they spoke, how they handled pressure, how they treated the chef, the cleaners, even how they walked through the halls. Every gesture was recorded. By the time a nanny finally sat across from Meghan and Harry, their fate was already decided. The final interview was simply a confirmation that the woman in the room matched the woman caught on camera. Inside that home, nothing went unseen. Nothing felt private. Nothing felt natural. Control was the foundation of the household, and soon the staff realized that same control reached far beyond hiring and into the core of the Sussex family story. Long before the public noticed any strange patterns, tension had already started to grow inside the home. And strangely enough, it began with the simple act of choosing a nanny. Harry had been raised by a Norland nanny, the elite standard in royal childcare. Disciplined, discreet, loyal, and trained to protect both the child and the family's image, Norland nannies were the tradition. Naturally, Harry wanted that same stability for his children, but Meghan didn't. She rejected the uniforms, the structure, and the traditional system that came with it. And according to those familiar with the household, she wanted something else entirely. Something modern, flexible, and distinctly California style. Meghan wanted a nanny who felt like family, not staff. No rigid routines, no royal traditions, nothing that connected her new household to the one Harry came from. It sounded like a small disagreement, but inside the mansion, it created the first quiet fracture. Harry leaned on the structure he grew up with. Meghan pushed for a complete reset. And from that point on, every childcare decision followed her vision, not his. The message inside the home became unmistakable. The old rules no longer applied. Everything would operate according to Meghan's design. But even with all that planning, something still didn't make sense. Because despite the detailed childcare system created around Meghan's preferences, no one ever actually saw the children. The maid doesn't dramatize her experience. She simply recalls what she witnessed every single day. She arrived before sunrise, left late in the evening, and walked through every room and hallway. And throughout all those hours, she never saw Archie. Not once. She never saw Lilibet, not once. She didn't even see signs children lived there. No baby socks in the laundry, no half-eaten snacks, no strollers by the door, no toys tucked in strange corners, not a single picture book out of place. Homes with young kids always carry Trace's tiny messes, fingerprints on glass, a monitor buzzing softly. But this house felt frozen, too perfect, as if the idea of children existed there, but not the children themselves. The silence grew so unnatural that it almost felt loud. Every day, the maid waited for any sound, a cry, a giggle, even a small footstep, but the stillness never broke. And then came the moment that shattered everything she thought she understood. Despite all her caution, she watched the Netflix documentary out of curiosity, wondering how the home she knew so well would appear on screen. She expected flattering lighting, maybe a few staged angles, nothing more. What she didn't expect was an entirely different world. Scene after scene played across the screen, Meghan holding a glowing baby bump, Harry laughing as he ran through a bright garden with children by his side, soft music, slow-motion smiles, picture-perfect moments. But to the maid, it all felt wrong. The rooms didn't match the home she worked in. The angles were unfamiliar, the pregnancy footage couldn't have come from the months she was in the house. And the scenes of Archie playing beside the chicken coop, she says those moments were pure fiction. The coop was real, but she never once saw a child there. Not Archie, not Lilibet, not ever. To her, it looked less like family footage and more like a carefully crafted production, something built to show the world a life that didn't exist inside those walls. Watching the documentary brought back the same cold feeling she carried during her time in the mansion. Not because the scenes were cheerful, but because she knew they weren't authentic. The world saw a polished story. She had lived the unedited version, and the two couldn't have been more different. If the documentary represented the surface, then the real house was the locked vault beneath it. The rules inside weren't gentle reminders, they were strict controls. Phones were confiscated at the gate. Bags were searched for anything that could record. Even a forgotten smartwatch could cause a quiet security scramble. Chefs, cleaners, gardeners, and drivers all knew one thing. Inside those walls, nothing could ever be documented. No photos, no casual conversations, no glimpses of anything unscripted. It didn't feel like a home raising children. It felt like a place designed to protect silence. The longer she worked there, the more the maid realized that silence wasn't an accident, it was the foundation of the entire household. It wasn't accidental. The secrecy in that house was intentional, monitored, and enforced. But even with all the rules, something about the people living there struck the maid more than any security protocol ever could. When cameras were around, Meghan and Harry appeared united, polished, affectionate, perfectly synchronized. But once the lenses disappeared, so did the illusion. Behind closed doors, the maid saw a very different reality, one without staged smiles or carefully edited warmth. She noticed that Meghan was fully present only when filming was scheduled. The moment production stopped, her demeanor shifted, her voice sharper, her movements controlled, as if every action had been rehearsed. Harry, meanwhile, seemed dimmer, quieter. After arguments, she'd often find him wandering the house in silence, moving carefully, like a man trying not to make anything worse. He didn't carry the joy people expect from a new father. Instead, he looked burdened by pressure, by strain, by something she couldn't put a name to. Their marriage didn't feel like a home. It felt like a business, with one person running operations and the other trying to avoid conflict. But through all of this, one thing never changed. There were no children. Not once. Not in the hallway, the garden, the nursery, nowhere. That empty house, combined with the secrecy, the silence, and the polished public narrative, paints a picture that's hard to ignore. A maid works there for months, yet never sees Meghan pregnant. A home built around childcare rules, yet no nanny ever cares for a child. A documentary about family life, but the scenes weren't filmed in the house she worked in. A chicken coop becomes a symbol of simplicity, but no child ever played there. A mansion full of surveillance and strict rules, but utterly silent, missing the joy, the chaos, the noise children bring. Meghan appeared mainly when a camera crew arrived. Harry moved through the halls like a man overwhelmed, and the staff, the people closest to the truth, repeat the same quiet claim: there were no children. Not once. Not ever. So The real question becomes impossible to ignore. If no one inside the home ever saw Archie or Lilibet, then where were they? It's the question the documentary never addressed, the question no photo has clarified, the question that grows louder with every testimony from those who worked behind the scenes. And that's why the silence surrounding the children feels so heavy, because silence grows when something is being intentionally hidden. The world was shown a perfect family. But according to the woman who lived inside that mansion, the biggest mystery in the Sussex story isn't what we've been shown, it's what's missing. And now that the silence has finally cracked, one thing is certain, this story isn't finished. And the next chapter might reveal the answer everyone has been tiptoeing around.